You're alone in your apartment. No one is home. No one is coming over. And yet, when you do something slightly embarrassing, drop something, trip over nothing, say the wrong word out loud to yourself, you feel it? A flicker of self consciousness, a faint sense that someone, somewhere, clocked that moment. You might even glance around. Nobody's there. You already knew that, but your brain checked anyway. That reflex is not a quirk. It is not anxiety. It is one of the oldest survival systems in the human nervous system, running quietly underneath every moment of your waking life, scanning for eyes that are no longer there. To understand why your brain does this, you have to understand what kind of world it was built for. Not the world you live in now, with locked doors and private rooms and the ability to be genuinely, completely alone. Your brain was built for a world where being alone was dangerous, where the presence of other eyes was not an inconvenience, but a signal. Something was either hunting you or watching whether you were trustworthy enough to keep around. For the vast majority of human history, your ancestors lived in small, tight social groups of roughly 20 to 150 people. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar, who spent decades studying the relationship between primate brain size and social group complexity, proposed that the human neocortex and the outer layer of the brain responsible for complex thought evolved specifically to track and manage relationships within groups of this size. His research, published in the early 1990s and still debated and refined today, suggested that the brain didn't get bigger to solve math problems or build cities. It got bigger to track who knew what about whom, to model the minds of the people around you, to ask at every moment, what does this person think of me right now? In a group of 150 people, your reputation was everything. It determined whether you ate, whether you were helped when you were sick, whether you found a partner, whether you were protected when a threat arrived. A single act of witnessed cowardice, cruelty, or dishonesty could alter the entire social calculation that kept you alive. This meant that being observed, being seen, was one of the most consequential things that could happen to a person, and your brain treated it accordingly. Psychologist Irving Goffman described this in his landmark 1959 work on what he called the presentation of self. He argued that human beings are always fundamentally performers, that the self you bring to any social moment is a carefully managed version of who you are, adjusted in real time based on your read of the audience. Goffman's insight was that this performance doesn't stop even when the audience leaves. The brain keeps running it, because for most of human history, the audience never truly left. This is the core of what researchers now call the watching eyes effect. The phenomenon was formally documented in a 2006 experiment by behavioral economists Melissa Bateson, Daniel Nettle, and Gilbert Roberts at the University of Newcastle. They placed a coffee machine in a university break room with an honesty box, a container where people were supposed to drop money if they took a drink. Above the box, they alternated two types of images each week. Some weeks, a simple image of flowers. Other weeks, an image of a pair of human eyes staring directly forward. The researchers changed nothing else. The coffee, the box, the system, all identical. In the weeks when eyes were displayed, contributions to the honesty box were nearly 3 times higher than in the weeks when flowers were shown. Nobody was actually watching. The image was a photograph. The eyes could not see, could not report, could not judge. And yet the brains of everyone who walked into that break room responded to those eyes as if they were real. Cooperation spiked, honesty spiked, the social performance kicked in automatically, triggered by nothing more than the shape of a human gaze. This has been replicated in dozens of forms since. Placing eye images in public spaces increases charitable donations, reduces littering, decreases theft, and even improves the hygiene behavior of hospital workers, who are professionally supposed to wash their hands regardless of who is watching. The brain does not ask whether the eyes are real. It responds first and asks questions later, if at all. Why? Because in the ancestral environment that built your nervous system, there was no such thing as a fake pair of eyes. If something looked like eyes, it was eyes. And eyes meant a mind was attached. And a mind meant calculation, judgment, memory. Someone was recording whether you were the kind of person worth trusting, worth protecting, spent years mapping the brain systems involved in what researchers call theory of mind. The ability to model what another person is thinking. Her work, along with decades of subsequent neuroimaging research, identified a network of brain regions, including the medial prefrontal cortex and the temporoparietal junction, that light up specifically when you think about being observed, evaluated, or judged. These regions are not modern. They are not cultural. They are ancient, shared across many social species, and they operate faster than conscious thought. By the time you feel self-conscious, the detection has already happened. The brain checked for eyes before you decided to. This is why the sensation of being watched can arrive even in rooms you know are empty. The system that generates it is not waiting for confirmation. It is running a continuous background scan, pattern matching against the shape of eyes, the angle of a face, the direction of a gaze, and triggering a low-level social alert every time it finds a candidate. Most of the time you don't notice it. Sometimes in a quiet room you do. And it explains something even stranger. The phenomenon known as the spotlight effect. Psychologists Thomas Gilovich and Kenneth Savitsky documented this in the late 1990s in a series of studies that found people dramatically overestimate how much other people notice them. In one study, participants were asked to wear an embarrassing t-shirt into a room full of strangers and then estimate how many people in the room noticed it. Participants consistently guessed about twice as many as actually had. The brain, wired to treat observation as constant and consequential, projects a spotlight onto itself that doesn't exist. You think everyone saw you stumble. Almost nobody did. Your brain is not tracking reality. It is tracking the threat of social visibility, which it treats as permanent even when it isn't. This misfire runs deeper than embarrassment. The same watching eye system is implicated in social anxiety disorders, in the experience of paranoia, and in the entirely ordinary but often crippling sense that other people are constantly evaluating you in ways that matter. The machinery evolved to keep you socially calibrated inside a village of 150 people, where it worked precisely as intended. But that same machinery dropped into a city of 10 million, or a social media feed seen by thousands, or a job interview or a first date doesn't scale. The threat of social observation feels as urgent as it did on the savannah, even when the stakes are a stranger glancing at your shoes on the subway. There is something almost tender about this. Once you see it clearly, the part of your brain that makes you feel watched in an empty room is the same part that made your ancestors trustworthy. It is the neural architecture of reputation, of belonging, of the deep human need to be the kind of person a community would choose to keep. When you feel that flicker of self-consciousness talking to yourself in the kitchen, or rehearsing a conversation you will never have, or adjusting your posture when you think someone might be looking, that is ancient social intelligence still doing its job, still trying to make sure that when the eyes arrive, you are ready. So the next time you feel watched in a room where nobody is watching, you can notice something your ancestors never needed to know. Those eyes you feel belong to a group that no longer exists, in a world that no longer exists, watching for a threat that is no longer there. And the brain, checking for them anyway quietly without your permission, is simply doing what it was built to do, keeping you ready, keeping you human.